Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Happy Monday, last day of March. What a long March it's been. It was, Keith, it was a very long, especially in Lakerland. We had so many games packed into 1 month. It has been an exhausting month of March, but we've made it the final day of the month, and we've got a lot of NBA topics to get into here. Actually, a few positive injury things here. So that's a nice change, huh?
Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take the good news with the general mountain of bad news. Even the bad news, there's one that's a little rough, but the others seem like they're okay. But I gotta ask, you've probably heard this before, but if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring?
June gloom? I don't know.
Pilgrims.
Oh my God. Are you kidding?
Dad
That is
jokes.
that's the dad joke of all dad jokes.
Let's
My
go.
goodness. Pilgrims.
Hey, we're less than 2 weeks to the playoffs.
That's
or
right.
to the play in, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Play
Coming
in.
up fast.
About 2 weeks away. Little less than 2 weeks left in the regular season now. So that's fun as well. So we're ramping up. But yeah.
Coming up fast. All right.
Yeah.
Let's get into it here. We've got Cade Cunningham out with a calf contusion. Now, obviously, the Detroit Pistons are not going to want to mess around with this. They're not going to want to take any chances or anything. But maybe this will matter when we look at the standings in the Eastern Conference in terms of setting up the 3-6 matchup as well as potentially the 4-5. So let's take a quick look at that. So right now, Detroit currently sitting in the 4-5 matchup with the Indiana Pacers, but they are one game up on the Bucks in the loss column. So if they drop a few games that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise, this could potentially put Milwaukee in a position to hurdle them. Although the Bucks are not exactly setting the world on fire right now. They've lost 4 in a row. So who knows if they'll actually, leapfrog the Pistons here.
The Bucks game against the Hawks last night or Sunday, if you're listening to this later, they looked completely lifeless for most of that game. They made a little bit of a rally late, but it wasn't much of a game. The Hawks, I think they finished with like 145 points or something. The Bucks just, I don't know. They feels like they were teetering, and then Bobby Portis suspended, Damian Lillard out. Like it's rough for them. It's a lot of Giannis, a little bit of Brook Lopez, and then kind of, all right, maybe Kuzma will get going, maybe Prince will get going, but the rest is pretty rough. So I think if you're Detroit, now here's one thing. Detroit has a rougher closing schedule than Milwaukee does.
Yeah.
But some of that is, let's see who's actually playing guys down the stretch, right? Cleveland's pretty well locked in. Boston's pretty well locked in. New York, pretty close to locked in. On the west side, the Thunder, we'll talk them more in a minute, but the Thunder are locked in. So if you got games against some of those teams, you may not be getting the full versions of those teams the rest of the way. It looks difficult on paper, but then let's see who you actually get. But Detroit, they lost yesterday. Did you see that brawl? And that
I did.
The Wolves, that got a little out of control. We're going to have some suspensions come down from that one. And that's going to be rough for Detroit because one of the guys who was involved in that and got thrown out and looked like he threw a punch when he kind of came into the whole thing was Marcus Sasser, who's been getting a lot of minutes as the backup point guard behind Dennis Schroeder because Cade Cunningham has been out. So let's see what the fallout is from that. My guess is we'll get that sometime probably later today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know if either Minnesota or Detroit plays tonight. Quick look says no. So that could come down tomorrow. No real there. And for anybody who didn't see it, Ron Holland scored on Naz Reid, talked some trash. There had been an incident with Dante DiVincenzo a couple minutes earlier where there's a little bit of pushing and shoving. Then Reid went in. Holland gave a foul. Reid didn't like it, had something to say. Holland basically told him where he could go. Then DiVincenzo came in, and initially it looked like DiVincenzo was just shoving Reid away, like, let's stop this. And then, pushing Holland away. Then Holland and DiVincenzo started going at it. Where it all went sideways is it spilled into the front row of the stands.
Yeah.
And that's what the league, that's where the league will be like, nope, not having this. There's going to be multiple game suspensions. Ultimately, in the end, Reed and DiVincenzo got ejected. Holland got ejected. Isaiah Stewart, because of course he was involved, got ejected. Marcus Sasser got ejected. And then both JB Bickerstaff and Wolves assistant Pablo Prigioni got ejected because they started having some words with each other as it was all kind of getting separated and cleaned up. So just a real mess. The league hates that stuff. So there's going to be some guys. And I thought something to really note, Isaiah Stewart, he's starting to rack up a little bit of a track record with stuff.
He is.
So if it looks like he gets an extra game, that's generally what the league does. If you're like a multi-time offender, you're going to start getting harsher punishments. So just something to keep in mind with Detroit, dealing with the injury for Cunningham, battling for seeding. That could be 3 key bench players all unavailable for, I'm going to guess, probably a couple games.
Yeah, exactly. So the NBA may come down a little bit harsher on Stewart than the rest, but we'll see where that all goes. And again, that obviously puts Detroit in a tough spot. But I don't know, like if you're the Knicks, do you have a preference on if you see Detroit or Milwaukee?
Part of me still says I think I'd rather see Detroit, younger team, never been there before, never done it. You don't have to deal with Giannis for 5 to 7 games. I'm not assuming it wouldn't be a sweep, but a 2 week long series, that's just tough. That's going to beat you up. You're going to have to go in, after battling, playing him. So I think you'd rather see Detroit. Yeah. But Detroit plays really hard. They play physical too. That game has that series, if it happened to be Knicks and Pistons, has a chance. But I think it's going to be the Bucks. I can't believe I'm saying this. I have a little more faith in the Pistons at this point.
Right, and that's why I asked, because that's not where I was a week ago. A week ago, I was like, yeah, you'd probably rather see the Pistons there, but the Bucks aren't exactly exciting, right? Like they're not. There's something to be said for playing your best basketball this time of year and hitting your peak at this time of year, and it's really important. And the Pistons might be the more dangerous team between the two sides now. Now that another week has gone by, that seems to be the way it's looking right now. Particularly, and some of that is not the Bucks. Some of that is injuries have hit the with Dame and obviously the suspension with Bobby Portis and all that. But still, I can't say that getting the Bucks would be the worst draw here for the Knicks right now. Even though they probably lean Pistons, but there's something to be said for not having to deal with that Detroit team in the way they play right now.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, too. You got Pacers and Pistons. There's obviously history there. They're longtime division rivals, so that'd be kind of fun. If you start to look a little further forward, who could challenge Cleveland more? It's, again, if you could tell me today Damian Lillard would be back, and we're starting to get some people pouring a little bit of cold water on that, like he's probably done for the year. That started coming out a little bit this weekend. Various places, ESPN was one of the places, I think it was on the Hoop Collective, that they're like, they're saying indefinitely, but the word is maybe not this season. But that's just such a limited Milwaukee team. It really is. Giannis and then our other guys making shots. If they're making shots, they'll be tough. If not, all right, Giannis might get 50, but you kind of control everybody else and you win. And that's that's a bit of a bummer, but let's see where it all plays out. It's gonna be fun to watch. At least we have a little bit of interest in the East in the top 6.
Sure. Yeah. All right, let's jump over to the West. Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively returning for the Mavs, not immediately, but as Mark Stein noted, sometime this week. Yep. They're going to be looking to get back in action, and that will give Keith. It's worth noting the Mavs have now jumped up. They're now actually the 9 seed in the West. They've won their last couple. The Sacramento Kings have fallen. Now they're the team that the Phoenix Suns are chasing, but I use the term chasing extremely loosely because my God, they did not look like they wanted to be playing. And then Kevin Durant got hurt, turned his ankle.
Yeah.
Phoenix looks like they're running out the clock. Like just end the season already. But the Mavs suddenly getting a bit healthier. And I think a big part of what Dallas was trying to build with the Luka trade was that 3 big rotation that included Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford. Well, they only had that for part of one game, and that's it. And now you've got potentially all 3 of them again. It makes the Mavs, while not without Kyrie, they're not certainly what they hope to be, but definitely more of a night in, night out threat if they've got all three of those bigs to turn to here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't think Dallas, Sacramento, or the clinging to life Suns get through the second playing game. I can't see them beating, whether it's I guess we got to include the Grizzlies in there now too, but the Grizzlies, Warriors, Wolves, or Clippers, no matter who it is, I think I would, especially since that team will have home court advantage, I'll very heavily favor that team to win, to be the 8th seed. And then you're kind of talking like, all right, and then you're just the sacrificial lamb for the Thunder anyway.
Yeah.
But it matters for the Mavericks to be able to, hey, we made a little bit of a push here, just because the organization needs to get some goodwill back with their fans. And if it is, hey, this is what you're looking into next year, this AD Lively pairing, we get the right players around them, this is what we could look like going into next season, then that's, at least a little bit of something. They're kind of funky, right? They went from having no bigs to now it's like an all bigs roster once these guys get back, because it's these two, AD, PJ Washington, just like a ton of big men all around. And then they don't have a lot of guards, which we're going to touch on here next. But it's a interesting spot for Dallas. I think but when you're in that one game scenario, who knows, right? You can defend enough and give yourself a chance. Maybe they could pull off the upset.
Let's say Dallas has their three bigs. Who wins, Sacramento or Dallas, in game one of the plan?
Boy, that's tough.
And what does that say about the Kings? That's tough, right? That a super injured Dallas side, and we're like, they could probably beat the Kings.
I would lean Kings, but if it's in that, I'm gonna make it super easy. Whoever's home.
Okay.
So let's see who's the home team. But if it was a neutral game, I'd probably lean the Kings. Slightly, just I don't know. It's when you look at it, it's like, all right, well, they still have Sabonis and DeRozan and Levine and Malik Monk. Like, how's Dallas going to keep up scoring? But the Kings just they're weird. There's just games where they're just not very good. And then, where do you go?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think either of them survives the Clippers or the Wolves in that second game. I'm agreeing with you there. But it wouldn't be impossible for Dallas to beat Sacramento, to get to round 2 of the play-in. And then, if they do make the playoffs, if they do somehow survive that, they get past the Wolves, they get past the Clippers, whoever it is. They'd probably go home in 4 games. Maybe they can push it to 5 or something like that when we're talking about OKC. But yeah, I mean, like you said, there's something to like giving fans a glimpse of, see, like, this is what we wanted to be able to showcase, having these bigs and being able to build something. And maybe it creates a little bit more enthusiasm in Dallas than has been there so far. Keith, it's, I've talked about it a bunch. It's the only way forward for the Mavs. The only way to fix the situation for Dallas is to win games. That's it. That's the only way that they can smooth things over with their fans. So, I hope that they're able to come back and stay healthy and all of that. But speaking of which, of staying healthy, coming back, they've been at a roster crunch here because they're up against that first tier apron hard cap. What's going on with their two-way players now?
Yeah, so with their two-way players, Brandon Williams and Kessler Edwards, who have become key rotation guys as the Mavs have been so banged up, they're both now out of NBA games on their two-way contract. Or Williams maybe has 1 left, but it's very close. But they're basically out. As we've covered before in other situations, two-way players not eligible for the postseason. So that includes the play-in tournament or the playoffs. So you need to convert them. Well, Dallas is only roughly $50K under their first apron hard cap. So they can't even fill those spots until April 10th. So they're going to have to go another week and a half without either guy. The Edwards one, it's fine, but as you get healthier up front, less of a concern. He played a lot at center, which is weird because he's much more of a 3 who can play the 4, but he did have to play the 5 some. Now we're in a spot, though, where Brandon Williams, with the Kyrie Irving injury, has become a very key player. because as you look at the roster that's on the screen there, it's funny because he's on a minimum, so he's not even on the screen. Spencer Dinwiddie's the only healthy ball handler on this roster. So it really falls to him. They've been running a lot of stuff through AD, which is fine. You can run offense through Anthony Davis. Then the next guy who in the pecking order has been Najee Marshall. And then it's kind of cobble it together through Max Christie and Jaden Hardy at best, because those are the next guys, because Dante Exum's out, Kyrie Irving's out. They were short ball handling after the trade anyway. So this is a tough spot for Dallas. Now, one of the things is they've got the one open roster spot. They're going to convert somebody. I very heavily lean it will be Brandon Williams, just because they need another ball handler. But some folks have said, could they also get Kessler Edwards? The only real path to that would be waiving Dante Exum. And if you waive Dante Exum, not the end of the world. He's injured. He's out for the season. He's not going to be a priority free agent for anybody. But you do lose his early bird rights. And that part is a little tricky for Dallas, because you would rather have that, if you can avoid it. So we'll see how they're feeling. I think if they were to do both, that's much more of a sign of them saying, we feel like we can win through the play-in tournament and get into the playoffs. If this is probably one or two more games and we're only going to convert one guy, then it'll probably be Williams. Now, what that would mean, though, is they'd have to wait until there's only 2 days left in the season. So that would have to be the 12th to convert both guys. That's the only way you can do both guys there. So tough spot that the Mavs have put themselves in, and they're battling through it as best they can.
Yeah, they're doing what they can there, and there's beyond just from the team perspective of the benefit of making the playoffs in terms of maybe inspiring a little bit of hope among Mavs fans. There's obviously a financial aspect of it too, right? Where you get 4 more games, 2 home games, playoff games, ticket prices for those games, all that kind of stuff. So if they feel like they have a shot, maybe it is worth it to take that gamble with Exum, but it'll be interesting to see how the Mavs actually proceed here and go from there. I could say this though, Keith. The Mavs, at least, they're fighting. The Mavs are fighting. They're doing what they can to win. They're not setting like those Suns down in Phoenix.
And then we might as well go there. I know you referenced it briefly.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant hurt his ankle in their game on Sunday. They got absolutely destroyed by the Houston Rockets. But KD hurt his ankle. They said after the game he's going to go get an MRI done. That's tough for Phoenix. Can you flip back to the standings? Because they're starting to fall. They're kind of lucky that the Kings have been playing like crap, because they are now 2 games behind the Kings in the loss column. And again, we're talking they've got, 7 games left? The Kings have 8. That's 2 games is not – it's not undoable, obviously,
but it's not easy.
Impossible. It's just a little tricky. It starts to get to be all right. And then if you're doing it without KD, Bradley Beal's already out. You're kind of leaning on, all right, well, this is Devin Booker and a bunch of guys, and maybe we can get it done. But tough spot for them. Interesting to note with the Suns, I'll just call this one out too. And if anybody's interested in reading a lot more about this, I covered for Spot Track. I covered all the teams with open roster spots and or two-way situations to watch. It's kind of funny. It literally posted as the Jordan Goodwin news was breaking. So we just had to add a note about the Goodwin situation, because I had put a lot of stuff in there about what the Lakers might do with him. With the Suns don't have an open roster spot. They could get one relatively easily. They've got some veteran guys on expiring deals that don't play. Colin Gillespie's on a 2-way. He's got plenty of eligibility to carry him through the rest of the regular season, but he starts for them at point guard right now. So they would need him in the playoffs, presumably, or the play-in tournament, presumably, and then the playoffs. So we'll have to keep an eye. I think they're still in it on the last day, which, funnily enough, they play the Sacramento Kings on the last day of the season. I think you're going to see that day Colin Gillespie get converted to a standard deal. Just because they're gonna want to have him there.
Agreed. So let's talk about that really quick. So Sunday the 13th, the Suns play the Kings. It's a home game for Sacramento, and in that game, Now, I hope we're at a point in the standings where that game matters. I hope we are,
Sure.
but the Suns are going to have to win a little bit for that to be the case. But in that game, not only will it determine the who, obviously, just in terms of record, that could matter there. It will also determine the tiebreaker between these two teams. Right now, Sacramento is up 2-1 in the series. If the Suns win, if you look at their division, it would go to division record next. They'd be 2-2 on the season. It would next go to division record, and then the Suns would win that tiebreaker based on division record with the Sacramento Kings. So not only is this a big game just in terms of your record overall, but if the Suns were to win, and even if it pulled them tied with Sacramento in terms of record, the Suns would go ahead because they would also win the tiebreaker over the Kings in that situation. It would be, obviously, does this really matter? Big picture? No, I wouldn't predict either team would go deep in the playoffs or anything like that, but still would make for a little bit of drama, a little bit of excitement on the last day of the season.
Yeah, and that's a really, really important call out that you made, because the Suns can go into that game, that final game of the season, down a game to Sacramento, because they only need to get tied. If you're Sacramento, you would prefer to win outright. You'd prefer to go into that final one up, and you're done there. So and if you're the Kings, if you're game down, then it's effectively over, because even if you tie, I guess they would win the season series.
If the Kings won the game, they would also win the tiebreaker. Correct. So they could also be
so even if
down.
one way or another is up a game, that still is important.
Yeah.
So that'd be a little bit of fun, because that I think the other thing in the West to watch is obviously the 6 line where the Warriors are sitting right now. Can they hold that? Memphis has really come back to the pack with just playing some awful basketball over the last month or so, which we covered on Friday when we talked about the out of nowhere Taylor Jenkins firing. But that gets to be a very interesting spot to watch there, because clearly you'd rather be in 6. What I think too, right now, just the way it's kind of looking, Houston looks like they might be able to hang on to the 2 seed. That makes that 7-8 play-in game extremely important.
Yeah.
Because you would much rather be the 7 seed and playing the Rockets. All credit to the Rockets, who had a terrific year,
for sure.
Really played well, but you'd much rather play them than the Thunder.
Absolutely.
So that 7-8 game, that game's always good, but man, that could be like a all-time great one in the play-in.
Absolutely. Let me chime in a little bit there on the Memphis situation. So I was at the Grizzlies Lakers game the other night. I went to that one. And here in Memphis, like the media lot, Keith, I've never seen the media lot that full before going to that game. Like that told you right there that there was something up. I'm like, I got there a little bit extra early too, and the lot was packed, right? So, but we go in there, and Thomas Lasolo, apologies for mispronouncing your name there, but he reiterated, like, I think in 3-4 times in his 15-minute pregame interview, that he doesn't have enough time to change a lot in Memphis. That because it's so close, like everybody was expecting, oh, cool, they're going to go pick and roll heavy. The ball's going to be in John Morant's hands. He threw cold water on all of that. He's like, I'm going to tweak a few things here and there, but there's not enough time for me to make like drastic changes. So I don't know that the coach changes. He said, I'll tweak some things, and of course he will. I don't know that it changes a bunch about the trajectory of the Grizzlies just because of the time aspect of things.
Yeah, and that was something Zach Kleiman did a very brief conversation, and he basically said, one, was my decision. There were because there was a lot of like, did John Morant drive this? Did other players drive this? And he was like, it was my decision only. No players were involved. And he pretty much said, we wanted to try something different. And that's what we said on Friday. As much as everybody wants there to be some grand conspiracy, I think the Grizzlies very much were, look, we're probably doing this in 3 to 4 weeks anyway, if we get bounced out in the first round of the playoffs. So let's just do it now. Let's get somebody else in here. Maybe we can spark something and improve. But Kleiman's other thing the important thing is, we're setting very realistic expectations. There's not a lot of time to go changing everything and all that. And that's where for them, it would be important to stay in the top 6 because then you get almost that like 4-day window, I think it is, before
to practice
the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that could be a chance to say, hey, let's reinstall a couple pick and roll sets. Let's reinstall some stuff where Ja is working off screens. There was a stat that's been floating around since the firing that since they changed their offense, they were one of the heaviest on-ball screen teams in the league the last few years, and now they are at the bottom of the league, and it's by like a massive gap. Yeah. And what we mean by that is that's basically your traditional pick and roll where the ball handler comes up and gets a screen from a teammate. They used to be extremely heavy. Now they're way, way, way down at the bottom. And they tried to institute this motion-based movement system with a lot of off-ball stuff. And then it just wasn't working for them the way they want it to be. Their offense has been pretty good. Like they're
6th in offensive rating.
Yeah. They have one of the higher point differentials in the league too. It's second best in the West, well, tied with Houston now. So things are going okay. What the bigger challenge in Memphis is, they haven't been beating good teams basically since the calendar year changed. And since the trade deadline, they've played awful. So that's, where it was. There was a change coming, and that's, kind of where they left it. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, they get off to the best start. They get Boston tonight. Yeah. Then they have the Warriors next. Like, that's Lakers, Celtics, Warriors. Like, nobody did them any favors. So let's see where it goes.
Yep. We'll see where things go from here. All right, let's go. Let's do this. One coach on his way out, the other one stick around. Darko Rajakovic got his option picked up for the 26-27 season for the Raptors. So this is, Keith, there's the famous scene in Moneyball where the coach, God, why am I forgetting the actor's name? Hoffman. Is he's talking to Brad Pitt, and he's saying, hey, everybody knows what kind of message it sends about a coach on the last year of his contract, and I can't coach the team on the last year deal and all that. Essentially, we're talking about a lame duck coach. That's what the Raptors are avoiding, is they don't want Darko coming in next season on an expiring deal, essentially, because it doesn't suggest a lot of faith, a lot of buy-in, and that's not what they want. So they pick up the option for 26-27. That way he's not on an expiring deal next season. It just helps overall with the voice in the locker room of the coach and the kind of weight that carries, because players aren't looking at him like, do I really want to listen to this dude? Because he may not be here next year.
Yeah, and I think it is a little strange. This is a little early. Normally we would see something like this happen in the summertime, in advance of free agency for all the reasons you laid out, or they would say, we're kind of done. Let's see how next year goes. But this is really important for Toronto as well, because this sends hey, we've got some stability here. Front office is pretty well entrenched. Their core of guys is all under contract through this same year as Rajakovic now. So you've got Barnes, Barrett, Pirtle, quickly, and now Brandon Ingram, who signed an extension all through at least the 26-27 season, all under contract. And this also says to me that Toronto's basically saying, yeah, we're pretty happy with the work Darko Rajakovic has done. They know where they're at as far as we're rebuilding, we're retooling here on the fly. And now everything's kind of locked in to go into next year. Not saying they're not going to make roster changes and moves and the like, because they certainly will, but you're at least in a spot where you can kind of look at it and say, all right, kind of like the way this looks.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like there's a little error there with Ingram.
Yeah, with Brandon Ingram, I just
he's got
I'm gonna put it on my notes to fix when we get done.
Okay, so but yeah, I mean, this is the Raptors. They're a team that could vastly improve. By the way, a lot of Raptors fans, Keith, are looking right now and they're like, what are we doing? Why do we keep winning games?
Right.
They've been winning, but it's funny because it's like we want teams to do certain things, but only in the way that we want them to do those things. So for example, like people get mad at a team if they're tanking, if they're resting play. Like, no, we want you to lose games, but not that way. not by just overtly resting everybody. We don't want any of those kind of shenanigans. We're going to get mad at you for that. You look at like the Utah Jazz and stuff like that. Then you look at the Raptors. No. We're glad you're not like resting guys too much. Brandon Ingram, could he actually play? Well, that's maybe another conversation, but don't accidentally win games either. We want you to lose games, but we want you to play everybody, and we want you to lose by 1 point in all of your games. Otherwise, we're going to be upset with you if you go either direction too far the other way. It's funny.
Yeah. It is, it's tanking is such a weird thing, and people have all kinds of feelings about it. And every year it's worse than it's ever been is the narrative that gets put out there. And I think it's exactly the same as it's always been. Mm-hmm. And I still think in the NBA, the system is better than some of the others. And people say this all the time. They're like, you don't get this in the NFL. Oh, bull crap. You don't. Like we saw a whole bunch of teams, at the ends of seasons start sitting guys out and not playing guys and playing the
and just put in your quarterback that's not experienced, and that alone can derail a team. And we do see in the NFL.
Baseball, I don't think you get as much because it's their draft's a little different. I don't know enough about hockey to speak to it, but it kind of is what it is with the tanking stuff. I will say this. Utah's lost their way into the first spot now in the lottery. And yes, we talk about it a lot. You can see it on the right-hand side of the screen, the flattened lottery odds for the top 3 picks. But you still would rather be as high as you can get. So that way, if one team jumps, you're still second instead of third or fourth or whatever it might be. So, and Philly now in that 5th spot, kind of, we can take the Raptors out. They're done. You're not with them. And look, they're only 2 back of New Orleans. And the Pelicans have won a few games, here recently.
They're 4-6. It's not impossible for them to fall to 4. Like if Philly really commits and says we're not winning a game the rest of the season, and I don't know what that would take exactly, but they've lost 8 in a row. What's 8 more? Just lose all the way out and then who knows? Because if you get to the 4th spot, not only do your odds of top 4 go up, your odds at the number 1 overall go up, but like you said, that's even more protection against teams jumping. Because remember, if their pick falls anything higher than 6, if it's 7, 8, 9, 10, they don't get it. It's gone. Yep. And so this is a big deal for Philly to drop as low as they possibly can and protect themselves as much as possible.
Yeah, and like we say all the time, in 5, if one team behind you jumps, you're still okay. That's why it was important to get to 5, because the likelihood of more than one team jumping from 6 or lower is pretty small. I don't know how often we've seen that, but I know it's not very often. Yeah. So that's where I think you feel okay with that. So, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff to watch. It is kind of funny if you look at it. If you like, the first 11 picks would not change hands, and then scroll down a little bit if you can. Okay. On here, and then it's like every pick changes hands like way down the line.
Yep,
like it's crazy.
Look at that.
I think it's 21 of the final. I'm having my math is off, but whatever it is, of the final 19 picks, I think it's like 15 change hands or something.
Wow,
so, crazy.
And look, it's like Brooklyn. Yeah. It's the same teams that are getting all these picks. Yep. Well, that's going to make things interesting on draft day. But these are not situations though where, well, I guess some might be. Are we going to be seeing a lot of wrong hats here?
Well, these will all change hands.
These are all ahead of
the draft,
right?
Yeah. So these will all change hands as soon as we know what the draft order is.
Right.
These will all switch up. These ones, as you start with Orlando and back, we'll know those. As soon as the play-in tournament is over.
True.
Because we'll know the teams that are in there. But yeah. Yes, we will still get hat foolishness when the draft itself starts and teams start moving around. And I've been talking to some people. There's some thought of we could see some real moves, especially with like the Nets. Because the Nets, they don't want 4 rookies on the team next year. They would much rather package a couple of those together and try to move up if they can, or something like that.
All right. Speaking of the Nets, Timmy to the Nets. Good to see him back in action here. What kind of a deal is this that he's landing on?
You get a 2-year deal, minimum team option for next season. So the Nets have full control. We'll see what the Nets want to do with it. He's played really well. He tied Derek Coleman's Nets record for points in consecutive games by a rookie, which are first 2 games, which is, that's a little bit like I led this club in, 9th inning doubles in the month of August for Mr. Baseball.
Sure.
But hey, it's better than nothing. He's played pretty well for the Nets, and he had been coming off a pretty good run in the G League before that too. Just one other minor note with the G League. G League season is over now, so you're seeing a lot of teams have their 2-way guys with them in the NBA, because if we're not if you didn't make the G League playoffs, teams are just, they've pulled their guys back up. So like the Heat have all their 2-way guys because their team did not make the playoffs. So they've got them all with them. But Drew Timme, late season call up, every once in a while, these really do matter. I know some people are like, who really cares? Well, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, they all mattered when they were late season guys that came over. Kendrick Nunn was another guy who came over late. So we're saying, and you pull up the most.
There it is. 19 points off the bench in 29 minutes played, and an accidental win for the Nets against the Washington Wizards in that game as well.
Double tank game, and you don't really want to win those. So
no. All right. I accidentally skipped this one. Jalen Brunson ramping up. The priority is on the playoffs. Obviously, that's a big deal for the Knicks. Yep. But as we were talking about earlier about teams that are kind of locked into their spot and how they can take their foot off the gas a little bit, that's the Knicks. When you look at the Eastern Conference, the Knicks, they are pretty securely placed close in that 3 seed. They're not realistically going to be going anywhere either up or down, and so you can really just Jalen heal up. The idea, I think, would be for him to come back before the playoffs start and at least get a couple of games under his belt to just get into a rhythm and all that. But they don't. The nice thing is they don't have to rush him back because they're in this tight playoff race or anything like that. They're pretty well set where they're currently situated.
Yeah, and the Knicks are going through it a little bit at the point guard spot. Brunson's been out for a while. Campaign is now out. Miles McBride has also been out. So they've been starting DeLon Wright, who is hadn't played really since being acquired at the trade deadline much at all. And they've started him. He's played okay in the last couple of games, at least giving them some minutes. And then Tyler Kolek's getting all the backup minutes at the point. But with Jalen Brunson, I think, you'd like to get him back maybe in that last week to play a couple of games you're not throwing him right into a playoff series. His first game back. Because you remember too, you can play him and then you get about that week off until you're going to play again, because you're not going to play again until the Saturday or the Sunday if you're in the top 6. And because there'll be 3, they're going to know who they're playing. They're not going to be waiting out the play-in tournament, so they'll be able to really use that week to fully prep and game plan and everything, and you could get him back. But you'd like to see him play for the end of the season. That's my guess, is we'll see him in the last 2-3 games there. He said he's he's been cleared for basketball activities. He's been running and cutting and all that. Next step will be probably playing some 3-on-3, 5-on-5 contact, and then we go from there.
All right, let's talk NBA expansion. Where are we at on that front?
Yeah, so we covered this last week out of the Board of Governors meeting. Adam Silver, as close as he has come, if you didn't catch the Friday show when we talked about this, as close as he's come to saying, it's happening, and it's going to be Seattle who gets one of the teams. Because what he said when asked by a Seattle-based reporter, which Seattle sent people to the Board of Governors meetings with the sole intent of hey, are we getting a team?
Right.
And he's like, hey, we know how much you guys want a team. We'd love to have a team there. And basically his overall comments were, yes, we said when we were done with this. And he said, basically now it's going to be just, let's put the final touches on the Celtics sale, and then we can move forward with expansion. So we'll see. I would not, don't hold your breath. It's still probably going to be a few years before we actually get there. My guess is probably next year, meaning in 2025, 26, I'm using the NBA league year here. That's when they're fully open. We're starting the process. By the end of that year, they'll have all the bids. They'll probably pick the team before the next season. And then we'll get into the real, all right, now we're getting into the real process of
and
naming the
pinpoint a
teams,
year.
protected list. Yeah, exactly. So be probably about 3 more seasons before we actually see those teams. One other thing he did know, and this has been noted by other folks, is they've got to figure out what's going on with the RSNs, the regional sports networks, because about half the league is working with regional sports networks, or were working with a group that declared bankruptcy. And it's been kind of messy. There's been a lot of talks of teams now maybe banding together to sell their rights off to like a streaming service.
Yeah.
We've already seen some teams go over the air and do their own. So the Suns did that. The Jazz have done that. So just a lot more to come with all that. And that's one thing that they said, we'll hold things up a little bit because they don't want to bring 2 new teams in and be still dealing with local television issues and all that, and what that all might look like.
That's funny. That's actually one of the plot points in the Genie Bus backed Running Point show that's on Netflix, I think. Anyway, pretty sure it is. Anyway, but in that world, the big market teams, that it's obviously it's not real NBA teams, but it's, we know like who they're really talking about. The big market teams all band together and sell just their TV rights as a package, and then all the small market teams are mad at them, and they, anyway. But that's interesting. The idea of teams banding together and kind of combining to sell their rights to somebody.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think we are headed to a world where you may still have like it would be the big market teams, so Boston, the Lakers, the Knicks, still have a local TV presence. And I think you're going to see very few of the rest have their own local TV presence. There'll be a way to get the games locally, probably over the air or through like a streaming provider where you can get in. But it'll be basically everybody's available on League Pass. And that's how you get games. Kind of what MLS has done.
It just if we can just get rid of the damn blackouts, like that's what everybody hates. So
I think the NBA would love to. That's just not their call solely. That's still an FCC thing and foolishness from olden days. And plus, the big thing is you would need the NFL to get fully on board with saying, yeah, we're out on blackouts too. And until they do that, which I don't know why that hasn't happened yet, because I don't know how many NFL games are actually getting blacked out in the local market anymore. But yeah, it really is pretty stupid at this point. And all you're doing is asking people, hey, go do illegal things to watch.
That's all people are going to do. They're going to say, okay, we're going to go use an illegal stream or something then to watch the game, because it's ridiculous that that in market, you can't even watch the game. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, you should not have to have cable just because.
No. All right. Last thing, good news. Zach Lowe's back. Got picked up by the Ringer. Maybe not a surprise in terms of his landing spot, but Zach Lowe back in action. Always a good thing. Great guy. Does a great job covering the league. So exciting that he's back after being let go by ESPN. Was so disappointing too, especially seeing the types of people that they are pushing at ESPN. It's certainly not the Zach Lowe's of the world that dig deep into the game. And so it's always nice to have voices like his back in action.
Yeah, and this Bill Simmons announced this directly at the top of his pod, which was he announced it before he got into the pod with his regular Sunday pod with Ryan Russillo. And basically said, yeah, he's coming back. He's joining the Ringer, so that'll be to home of his written content. And then they announced his pod is coming. He's going to have his own podcast 2 days a week, the Zach Lowe Show. Pretty simple name there. The teaser trailer is already up. So you could go subscribe and download to that. And then Bill said Zach will be on his pod on Tuesday as well. I'm excited because it just means we're going to get him back ahead of the playoffs and then ahead of the offseason. And that's, huge to have Zach back. I mean, he's favorite of the two of us, just whether it be podcast or his written work. He's somebody who I really love the way he writes about the game. The work I do on the basketball bulletin, and yes, I know it's been a little light lately. I've just been swamped with a billion things going on, and now I'm finally coming out of that. But a lot of what I do with the game breakdowns and pulling clips was inspired by the work Zach used to do over at ESPN. So it's just good to have him back. Like, it's just going to be great.
Absolutely. So welcome back, Zach. Happy to have him back and producing NBA stuff once again. All right, everybody. That's it for today. We appreciate all of you for joining the show. Don't forget to subscribe right here to the channel on YouTube, as well as the podcast feed over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.